Well, hello and welcome to my sixth Monopoly board video. And in this one, we're going to look at the yellow set of properties on the London board. Now, like the light blue, the pink, and the red sets, the yellow properties are all linked geographically, but they're also linked thematically, like the orange ones are. But this set is associated with nightlife and entertainment. Well, I don't know a lot about nightlife, to be honest with you, but Mrs. C and I did have our first date in the Odeon Cinema in Leicester Square. Leicester Square, very much an entertainment hub nowadays. London's biggest cinemas are all clustered around the square, and it's the venue for more film premieres than any other location in the UK combined. Leicester Square is at the heart of the West End of London, which is what we call the theatre district. It's also home to many restaurants and is noted for its Chinese cuisine because it borders on Soho's Chinatown. Now, like Pall Mall, Leicester Square came into being during the Restoration period, just a few years later in 1670. It developed around Leicester House, home of the second Earl of Leicester, a man called Robert Sidney. For almost a century, it was a highly genteel area, especially amongst those residents, including Frederick, the Prince of Wales, the father of George III. Poor old Prince Frederick, he never had much luck. He co-wrote a play which nearly caused a riot on the first and only night, and he lost a fortune giving the audience their money back. Like most of the Hanoverian dynasty, he never really got on with his father, who actually refused permission for him to see his mother, Queen Caroline, when she was on her deathbed. Finally, he died at the age of 44, supposedly after being struck by a cricket or a real tennis ball. Coming back to Leicester Square, reflecting its connections with the theatre and later with cinema, the gardens in the square contain a famous statue of William Shakespeare and another one of Charlie Chaplin. And more recently, statues have been added, including Paddington Bear, Mary Poppins, Harry Potter, and Bugs Bunny. Mind you, you do have to really look to find some of them. For example, Wonder Woman is halfway up a wall, and Batman is standing on the roof of the Empire Cinema. You're really spoiled for choice for things to sketch in Leicester Square. Now, I settled on this view, which is actually from the mid-50s. The film showing in the Warner Cinema behind the two gals on the bench is Hondo, a John Wayne Western released in 1953. I just really liked the two Londoners chatting on the park bench. Even now, in the third decade of the 21st century as we are, you still can't beat yakking on a bench in Leicester Square on a sunny day. So we move on to Coventry Street. Let me tell you, if you've never done it, you can walk along Coventry Street from one end to another without even realising you've just done so. It's one of the shortest streets on the London Monopoly board. You come to the western side of Leicester Square, and you're as near as anything already in Piccadilly Circus. Still, that short thoroughfare you've just walked down between the two, now that is actually Coventry Street. Like Leicester Square, it does date back to the reign of Charles II. It's named after Henry Coventry, one-time Secretary of State to the Merry Monarch. For a long time, it had quite a seedy reputation, gambling houses and prostitution. In the second half of the 19th century, its reputation slightly improved as it became home to several music halls. During the last century, it became particularly known for restaurants and nightclubs. Notable establishments have included, well, the one in the picture, the Swiss Centre. This was a very modern building which lasted from 1966 until it was demolished in 2007. Its most notable feature was a carillon clock. I think the best way of saying that is kind of like a glockenspiel made out of bells, really. And it has been preserved on the site. The site, as I found out when I visited in 2021, is now home to M&M's World. I'm not a lover of many modern buildings, which is one of the reasons why so many of these pictures depict scenes from the 19th or right at the beginning of the 20th century. Now, I was born in London in the mid 60s, and I'm not totally blind to the realities of life in the modern world. I'm fully aware of the fact that London took a real hammering during the Second World War, and the socialist government, elected in 1945, had a lot of big promises to fulfil and no money with which to do it. I personally think it's remarkable how much they did manage to achieve. Still, with so many Brits and so many Londoners homeless or living in untenably cramped conditions because of the number of homes destroyed during the war, it was imperative to build cheaply, quickly, and upwards. So, for the next few decades, cities and towns across the UK saw a growth of brutalist concrete office and residential blocks. Now, concrete is a very useful building material, I get it, but it's just not suitable for life in the UK climate. It doesn't take many years before concrete starts to look awful. So I'm not a great fan of post-war British architecture, but when I find a post-war British building that I actually like, then I tend to make more of a thing over it. And the Swiss Centre in Leicester Square was one of these, and that's why I chose to draw it. I'm not going to go on and on about it. It was designed in a modernist style by a man called David Aberdeen, and I also like the Shrewsbury Market Hall he designed. I don't like Congress House, which he built 8 years before the Swiss Centre for the Trades Union Congress. That's a typical generic post-war concrete block, yet that's the one which is a listed building. Go figure. Well, from here, we are almost in Piccadilly Circus, so we'll have a look at that sketch now. Now, yes, I will come clean. This is actually a print of a sketch I made a couple of years ago of Piccadilly Circus. I can't show you that, the original, for the very good reason I sold it. But enough about that. Now, throughout the 20th century, Piccadilly Circus was particularly notable for its huge neon advertisements displayed on the side of some of its buildings. Through my childhood, there was a huge one, I remember, advertising Coca-Cola, which was on the junction with Regent Street. Now, the word circus in this case has got nothing whatsoever to do with the type popularised by the Ringling Brothers in the USA and Billy Smart in the UK. Just refers to the round shape of the junction. At the other end of Regent Street, the junction with Oxford Street is called Oxford Circus, and there's also a Cambridge Circus within a short distance. Now, the most famous feature of Piccadilly Circus, which you can see in the picture, is the statue of a winged archer. If you ask most Londoners who it represents, they'll incorrectly tell you it's the Greek god Eros. People who think they might know a little bit better could tell you that it represents the spirit of Christian charity. Well, they're both wrong. The statue actually represents Anteros, the god of requited love, the brother of Eros. Stands on top of the Shaftesbury Memorial Fountain. The 7th Earl of Shaftesbury was a Victorian philanthropist who successfully campaigned to end child labour in the UK and replace it with free education. During the 1980s, extensive repair work was done to Sir Alfred Gilbert's aluminium statue, and it had to be removed from the square. And as the work was completed, it was put on public display in London's Festival Hall, and you could actually view it from eye level on a platform. Now, bearing in mind the names of the other properties in the yellow set, you might be forgiven for thinking that the street was named after Sir Absalom Piccadilly, King Charles II's ceremonial bottom wiper. However, since he never existed, this is not true. It actually takes its name from the Piccadille. During the time of James I, Charles II's granddad, a man called Robert Baker bought a lot of land in the area, and he began to manufacture Piccadilles there. Now, if you think of portraits of prosperous Jacobean men, think of the engraving of Shakespeare on the front of the first folio, for example. You often see them wearing these broad, fancy cut lace collars. Excuse me just for a second. And those collars were actually what a Piccadille was. There we are. It comes probably from a Spanish word meaning pierced or cut. Now, the street Piccadilly has been home to many grand, stately houses. A lot of these are long gone, but Burlington House still stands, and that's the home of the Royal Academy of Arts. Piccadilly is also the home to the very exclusive Burlington Arcade of shops, and to Fortnum and Mason's. You can argue that Fortnum and Mason's are the world's oldest department store, because they opened in 1707. Really and truly, they were just a grocer's until much, much later. Very exclusive one, but a grocer's nonetheless. While we're going through the edited highlights, Piccadilly also boasts the Church of St James, designed by Sir Christopher Wren. And Piccadilly Circus Underground Station, where there are no surface buildings for you to see, not anymore anyway. It was a real achievement, and it caused a sensation when it opened in the 1920s. So that's Piccadilly. Now we have two sets left, then these stations, then the utilities. And in the next video, we're going to have a look at the green set. So I really hope you can make it. See you then.